housekeeping things. We are in a Zoom room, not a Zoom webinar, so we encourage you to put your view to speaker view. That'll help spotlight the speakers throughout our conversation today. We think we have effectively muted all of you, but if we haven't, please feel free to put yourself on mute. Please put your name, organization into the chat. Again, really wonderful to see all of you here. I personally am really looking forward to this conversation today. So again, welcome for all of you who are just joining us to Why Global Food System Governance Matters to Philanthropic Foundations. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anna LePay, and I am the Executive Director of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. We're a strategic alliance of philanthropic foundations working together and with others around the world, including many of you, for principles-based food systems transformation. And for the past couple of years, we've been working very closely with the Agroecology Fund and the Gates Foundation on the Philanthropic Foundations mechanism at the Committee for World Food Security, or CFS. I know that some of you who are beaming in are deeply engaged in this work, and others are learning about the CFS for the first time today, and we hope all of you get something out of this conversation. So we are really excited to talk about why global food system governance matters, how philanthropic foundations in particular can play a role. We have a very packed agenda with some wonderful folks to share perspectives on these themes today, and really, again, appreciate all of you for being here. I want to share just a couple of words about why we believe in the importance of philanthropy being engaged in this work, and then walk us through the agenda so you have a sense of what's coming at you today, and then I'll introduce our first speaker. So why do we see it so important, we believe, for those of us, including in particular working in philanthropy, to be engaged and more involved with CFS? There are many very good reasons why philanthropy should be involved, and three we wanted to highlight. First, which is that much of what is decided at the CFS influences the field that philanthropy works within, and particularly the changes that we want to see, we know the world needs. Secondly, we know the CFS is one of the most, if not the most inclusive global governance body on food. So engagement there is critical for those interested in supporting inclusivity in global food governance. And finally, to put it mildly, this is a very challenging time for multilateralism around the world. So even more so in this context, it's important to uphold participatory and inclusive global bodies like the CFS. And now for philanthropies, there is a mechanism to engage in the CFS, which you'll hear us talk about today. So again, welcome everyone. You're seeing people put their name and organization into the chat. Thank you for doing that. Again, if you just joined us, we are in a Zoom room, not a Zoom webinar, so you can put your view to view speakers, not gallery, and that'll help you spotlight the speakers. We will also be recording this conversation to share with those who weren't able to join us but are really interested in learning about what we'll be hearing about today. For our agenda today, first we're going to explore and hear from by video what the CFS is, why it's relevant to global food systems governance. We'll be hearing from Ambassador Nosipo John Gisele by video message. She's sorry she couldn't attend in person, but she's currently in transit to the UNCCD COP16 in Riyadh. Next, we'll hear from the Right to Food specialist for the FAO, who'll talk about the role the CFS has played in fortifying the right to food. Then we'll hear from two leaders who've organized within two other mechanisms within the CFS about the value of engaging at the CFS. And finally, we'll hear from leaders within philanthropy about the relevance for CFS for philanthropic foundations. If there is time, after all of that, we will hear your questions. We'd love to hear your questions. And if you have questions that are coming up for you during this conversation, again, please feel free to put those into the chat. This isn't a Zoom webinar, so we'll be using the chat for sharing any questions you have. And if we don't get to answer your questions today, it's really helpful for us to hear what questions are coming up for you. If we have that time, after those questions, we are closing out with words from the current lead of the Philanthropic Foundation's mechanism, Daniel Moss, co-director of Agroecology Fund, and Ludovica Donati, the lead of the PFM Coordination Committee. So I promised you we had a packed agenda, and as you heard from my run through, we definitely do. So again, thank you all. It's really wonderful to see all your names in the participant lists and see your introductions in your chat. And with that, I will turn it over to the team that's supporting on the back end. So thanks to Fatima from the Agroecology Fund, who's helping us behind the scenes. Turn it over to Fatima to bring up the video from CFS Chair Ambassador Jean Jusile.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you to the Philanthropic Foundation's mechanisms for organizing this webinar. It presents a good opportunity to share information about the CFS and its policy products with those who are less familiar with it. Unfortunately, I cannot join you directly or in presence today as I'm traveling to the UNCCD COP in Saudi Arabia. Whilst the PFM has only recently become a formal member of the CFS family, philanthropic foundations have long played a pivotal role in addressing global challenges, including food security and nutrition. Their agility, resources, and capacity for innovation make them indispensable partners in the fight against hunger and malnutrition. Yet, in a world characterized by intersecting crises, from climate change to conflict, achieving lasting changes requires not just resources, but evidence-based strategies and collaborative solutions. This is where the work of the CFS becomes invaluable. The CFS is unique within the UN family. It is the foremost inclusive international platform for all stakeholders: government, civil society, farmers, private sector, academia, and the UN Rome-based agencies, to work together to tackle the root causes of food insecurity and malnutrition. Over the years, the CFS has developed a suite of policy products and frameworks and guidelines that draw from the experiences of their diverse stakeholders, ensuring that they are both comprehensive and practical. These products are not abstract documents. They are tools for action designed to be adapted and implemented across diverse contexts. Furthermore, these policy products, having been developed in an inclusive and participatory manner by all CFS stakeholders, enjoy broad ownership. This builds the foundation for their use at local, national, and regional levels in a sustainable manner. Philanthropic foundations stand to benefit in multiple ways by integrating these tools into their strategies, programs, and projects. Firstly, CFS policy products offer a roadmap grounded in global consensus and the latest evidence. For example, the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition provide actionable steps to address malnutrition in all its forms, whilst the principles for responsible investment in agriculture and food systems offer strategies to ensure investments contribute to sustainable and equitable food systems. By aligning your initiatives with these guidelines, your foundations can enhance the credibility, coherence, and impacts of their efforts. Secondly, CFS products facilitate partnerships and collaboration. The philanthropic foundations often excel in forging innovative partnerships, but aligning these partnerships with international standards would amplify their impacts. The CFS voluntary guidelines on gender equality women and girls empowerment, for example, can provide a useful framework for centering women and girls in transformations for ending hunger and malnutrition. Thirdly, CFS products help foundations navigate complexity and mitigate risks. Implementing impactful programs in food security and nutrition require addressing interconnected challenges such as climate change, inequality, and biodiversity loss. The CFS products, like the Framework for Action for Food Security and Nutrition in Protracted Crisis, provide insights on how to operate in fragile settings whilst ensuring resilience and sustainability. Finally, let us not overlook the broader benefit. By championing the adoption of CFS policy products, philanthropic foundations contribute to a unified global approach to food security. Such alignment can lead to systemic change, multiply the impact of individual initiatives. To realize these benefits, I encourage philanthropic foundations to engage more deeply within the CFS. Participate in its work streams, bring your insights to the table, and advocate for integration of CFS products in your networks. At the same time, we at CFS are eager to learn from your experiences to refine and adapt our work further. Philanthropic foundations can be important stakeholders for the CFS, also as potential donors in support of CFS initiatives and activities, especially those included in the multi-year program of work. At this recent plenary session in October, the CFS adopted an action plan to enhance the uptake of CFS policy products. This action plan specifically highlights the important role of philanthropic foundations in promoting the uptake of CFS policy products. I strongly encourage you to take up this recommendation and put it into practice. Lastly, I would like to draw your attention to the high-level forum on strengthening responsible investments and financing for food security and nutrition. Your perspectives as philanthropic foundations will be crucial in informing and shaping this event. Therefore, we look forward to your contributions and participation. In closing, the challenges before us are vast, but so too are the opportunities. By leveraging the CFS policy tools, philanthropic foundations can not only enhance the effectiveness of their initiatives, but also become architects of a more equitable and sustainable global food system. Together, we can ensure that the right to adequate food is realized for all. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this webinar. I wish you fruitful discussions and hope to see you as part of the CFS family soon.
Thanks. Thanks, Fatima, for helping us bring the ambassador's voice in. It was great to have those contributions. So I want to pass over now to Marie-Laure Hubert-Chartier, the Right to Food Specialist for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, to share some words about the role played by CFS recommendations and processes in fortifying the right to food. So again, just really warm welcome to you, Marie-Laure, and I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's an honor to take part of the discussion. So as the UN agency specialized in food and agriculture, the FAO plays a central role in the realization of human rights, and most notably the right to adequate food. And the right to food is at the heart of the Reformed Committee on World Food Security. And in its vision, the CFS strives for a world Free from Hunger, where member states are implementing the Right to Food guidelines. So it is explicit in the current multi-year program of work of the CFS that the right to food is mainstreamed as the overarching framework of all the committee's activities. And the CFS uses its convening power to reinforce the uptake of the right to food as the framework of the efforts to achieve SDG 2 and food systems transformation. So food insecurity is a manifestation of extreme inequality and marginalization, and human rights are an essential tool for overcoming all forms of cross-discrimination, social exclusion, exploitation, and marginalization. And in analyzing the failure to access adequate food based on the right to food allows us to focus on the structural causes and systemic factors of exploitation of people and resources and how to respond to them, how to change our dynamics. And it calls to take into consideration existing power imbalances. So to safeguard agri-food systems rooted in local cultures, resources, and knowledge, we need to ensure that we preserve and rebuild solidarity and respect our respect for fellow humans, no animal and nature. So let's get back to some basics anchored in the law. First, a very quick distinction between food security and the right to food. So food security is a state of being. You know, we are either food secure or food insecure. While the right to food is a human right, it belongs to everyone, to you and to me. It is an entitlement, and it is the right for all of us to feed ourselves in dignity. It's not something that we choose to do because we think it's fair or because it's the right thing to do. And this means that eating healthy should not be a privilege, no, a consumer choice for those who can afford it. So the concept of dignity is really essential as it places the people at the center of discussions and processes. And as human rights are universal, interdependent, interrelated, and indivisible, the right to food is really essential to the enjoyment of all other human rights. So we can think about the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, or the right to water, for example. Yes, and this is very important and relevant for the work of the CFS in its policy tools. The right to be free from hunger is often described as the minimum core component of the right to food. It's closely linked to the right to life. But the right to adequate food goes beyond. No, it's really linked to dignity, diversity, and safety. It's what makes us having a healthy life. And states have an obligation under international law to respect, protect, and fulfill the right to food. And this means that they need to have a coherent and comprehensive policies and programs framework. And in pragmatic terms, the right to food is very well defined in international law. It comprises of 4 foundational elements, so availability, adequacy, accessibility, and sustainability. So food needs to be available either through productive resources, so we can think about land and water, but also through buying food, so we need to talk about well-functioning markets. Food also needs to be adequate, so this needs nutritional adequacy, but also safe and culturally acceptable. And accessible, the accessibility of food is both economic and physical. So food needs to be accessible with no discrimination of any sort. And it needs to be available all year round, so both for present and for future generations. So we really need sustainable agri-food systems. So at the core of the right to food are inclusive and participatory decision-making processes. So that means that ensuring that the people that are directly affected can meaningfully contribute to the development of policies and strategies. So the right to food is an obligation under international law. It's a goal, but it's also a framework under which we can think and strategize. It's really a tool that we can use. It's dynamic and it applies in all contexts at all times, even in the event of conflicts. So 20 years ago, the right to food guidelines were endorsed by the CFS and adopted by consensus by the FAO Council. And they were really a remarkable achievement. No, they were a breakthrough consensus among nations at the time. And while they are voluntary, it's really important to remind ourselves that they are grounded in international law. They're grounded in binding legal obligation, and they simply translate international legal obligations into national practical implementation. And most importantly, they advocate for a human rights-based approach to development and to the fight against hunger. So throughout this year, we've seen a very strong international momentum around the right to food, also generated by human rights violation in conflicts, including in relation to the right to food. We can share with anybody who's interested a brief that we've prepared on how central the right to food was to this year CFS. And member states really called for the strengthened actions focused on the right to food, on monitoring, on accountability based on human rights principles. And they reaffirmed that the right to food must be integrated into national policies, but also into international cooperation efforts in development aid. And so there will be an event next week during Human Rights Day, where we will be launching a report on the +20 of the right to food guidelines. So we really invite you to join in. It will be an event bringing together New York, Geneva, and Rome with all actors. So very interesting conversation happening. So as you all know, the right to food guidelines have spearheaded the development of additional human rights-based guidance. Now we know about the tenure guidelines, the right principles, but more recently also all the discussions around urban and peri-urban settings and how the right to food was really core to the analysis and to the recommendations that are negotiated. And so the right to food calls for a holistic approach to food security. It underscores the interconnectedness of agri-food systems with all that encompasses us as people and our planet. So this includes agriculture, health, natural resources governance, and labor rights. And it calls for coordinated efforts. It calls for policy coherence and also investments. And it reminds us they need to work together to look at policymaking and legislative process through a human rights-based approach from design through to implementation and monitoring. So thank you, and we'll be happy to continue this conversation and the strong collaboration that we have between the CFS and the FAO Right to Food team. And we're very happy all the time to provide tailored support as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Laura. It's just powerful work and really wonderful to have your voice here in the Zoom room with us. So we want to transition now to hear two perspectives from engaging with CFS with other mechanisms. So first we'll hear from Robin Anderson, who will talk about work within the private sector mechanism. And then we'll hear from Dee Woods, who will talk about the work of the civil society and Indigenous peoples mechanism at the CFS. And again, just thank you so much to Marie-Laura, and I will pass it over now to Robin Anderson, who is the president of Emerging Ag Inc., a company that works in agriculture, health, and nutrition, to talk about the work of the private sector mechanism. And again, thank you so much, Robin, for joining us. Over to you, Robin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I echo the words that have been said earlier, including by the chair of CFS. It really is a family. It is a space where we need all of these voices. So we really appreciate the philanthropy mechanism engaging in this way, increasing the range and number of voices that may be with us in CFS in the journey of the year ahead and the years to come. It seems like it's a really wonderful time for us to be talking about this as we move towards a next phase of work at the CFS. And just to give you a little bit of background, the private sector mechanism and the civil society and Indigenous mechanisms have been very active since the reform of CFS that allowed a voice for non-state actors to be heard and engaged in a very different way. We appreciate that a lot because we do believe there is no more fundamental discussion, as Marie-Laura said, than the question of how do we feed people? And so it's been a privilege for the private sector to organize around this. From a practical perspective, we have a secretariat that is part-time. My company provides that secretariat service to the International Agri-Food Network and the private sector mechanism. And we're very pleased to then have an opportunity to get a really diverse set of groups involved. The International Agri-Food Network represents Groups right from the International Seed Federation all the way through the Global Farmer Network that's currently chairing, on to groups like the International Food Technologists and the International Food and Beverage Alliance. So the whole of the agri-food value chain. And together they represent about 10,000 companies and more than 1 million farmers who are active in the agri-food sector. And then on top of that, we have about another 500 companies who are active at some level. We organize ourselves around quarterly briefing calls for the mechanism, and then set up committees that work based on the structure of what is happening at CFS. So for instance, last year, there was a lot of work on inequalities. A major set of voluntary guidelines were being negotiated. So we had a committee working on that and on the gender guidelines before that. And it was a pleasure to work with Dee and CSIPM and many of the other actors during that discussion. I think that discussion is a good example of where we need a more proactive philanthropy foundation. In many cases, the discussion amongst the countries was quite difficult and maybe not focused on equity as we would like to see it in its fullest forms. And so the opportunity to have another voice, another set of actors who really see the importance of the fundamental issues that we're talking about, I think is an incredible opportunity. And the extent to which you can engage and build out will be a wonderful opportunity. We've got urban and peri-urban farming coming up this coming year and a number of issues beyond. And as noted already, right to food underpins all of those discussions every year, along with the discussion of the state of food insecurity, which often kicks off the CFS assembly. So these things give you a context for some of what is being done. I'll also flag that one of the things that we find is we have private sector actors who are coming to CFS. We had a delegation of about 120 last year from diverse parts of the world. There's always an opportunity and a willingness to speak to all of you, to think about ways in which we can do some bilateral meetings, or to think about how we can advance some of these core issues. So it is also an opportunity to meet 600 to 1,000 people who are leaders in this space and have a real dedication and passion for it. So as you're thinking about how to build out the mechanism and how to engage with others, we're certainly here for you. We really encourage you to be there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robin. Appreciate your being here and sharing your perspective. I want to turn it over now to Dee Woods from the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, and would just love to hear, Dee, your perspective on the CFS, particularly as the work that you've been so critical in leading around addressing food insecurity and working with those most impacted by food system. So would love to bring you into the room now, Dee.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Robin. I echo many of the sentiments you've made. The Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, CSIPM, as Robin said, was founded in 2010 as part of the reformed United Nations Committee on World Food Security. And we are the largest international space of civil society organizations and social movements working to eradicate food insecurity and malnutrition. So we're autonomous. We're not an organization, but we have a secretariat who helps to facilitate civil society participation in the CFS policy processes. We're open and inclusive, and we have no formal members. So we welcome anyone who works in the space of right to food, food insecurity, and malnutrition. We have 11 constituencies, and these are peasants and smallholder farmers, pastoralists, fisherfolk, indigenous peoples, agricultural and food workers, landless people, women, and diverse genders, youth, consumers, urban food insecure, and NGOs. So technically, we represent hundreds of millions of people globally. So we also have our regional representatives. So we have 17 sub-regions, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, the Andean region, the Southern Cone, Western Europe. So I'm the Western Europe focal point, East Europe, North Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, South Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, West Asia, Australasia, and the Pacific. So we are truly diverse, diverse in languages, as well, diverse in what we understand to be food sovereignty and agroecology, and in the systems we're trying to develop. But we all come together through our policy working groups to come up with consensus around what we want as the CSIPM. So we have a coordination committee of members from the constituencies and sub-regions, and we try to balance gender as well as geography so that we're not global north dominated. And these policy work groups go alongside the policy processes that occur at the CFS. So we've just finished the Reducing Inequalities work stream. So we had an equity working group, and in fact, that work continues because it doesn't end when we get the policy process. You know, there is the uptake process. We don't want these products sitting on a shelf. And one of the things we have within the CSIPM is what we've nicknamed Roam to Home. So the development and dissemination of popular education products, as well as doing webinars and participating in other UN spaces, as well as our local spaces at home. And that could be in the field, in village, to a food policy council, but that costs money, and it's money we don't have. I think the role of philanthropy as someone who works in participatory and relational philanthropy is in shifting power and facilitating the dignified participation and agency of peoples and of communities. And apart from advocating within the CFS, I think the PFM has an important role to support the CSIPM to continue this meaningful inclusion of the most marginalized peoples from around the world, and also in supporting and promoting the uptake of policy products, as well as advocating for community and public partnerships. And this is based on the experience of many foundations and philanthropists working on the ground, and who understand what communities and people need. So I look forward to working with the PFM in the next work stream and many work streams to come. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee, so much. And thank you for your leadership as the focal point for the Western Europe of the Civil Society Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, and for the work you do with the Land Workers Alliance and with so many of the other organizations that you're such a critical part of. And I think the note you ended on around, what is that from your perspective, what's that role for philanthropy, the power of shifting power, the role that philanthropy can play in supporting the CSIPM. I think it's a beautiful note to end on to bring us to the next conversation we want to have together, which is bringing in some voices from philanthropy that have engaged with the CFS to talk about, from their perspective, what do they see as the relevancy there. So if I am reading our notes correctly here, we might have a video, Fatima, to bring in from Kira Bush from the CS Fund, or maybe we have Kira in person to share a few words. Thank you. I think I see a video coming up.
Yes. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Kira Bush. I'm a program director for Food Sovereignty Program for a small family foundation, the CS Fund, based in Northern California. We have programs in food sovereignty, but also in just transitions and around rights and governance globally. We are proud supporters of the Agroecology Fund and also have engaged in supporting many partners through work at the CFS for several decades. We've been especially pleased to see the introduction and evolution of the civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism at FAO, allowing grassroots actors, farmers, fishers, indigenous peoples, and other civil society members to speak directly to the policies that affect their lives and the food that so many of us consume globally, as well as the food economies that touch each of us personally. As part of our philanthropic voice, we've been very happy to partner with the Agroecology Fund and the Global Alliance for the Future of Food and others in helping gain a philanthropic seat at the table. As so much of this work is funded through private philanthropy or through public aid, it's really beneficial to be able to have a voice and a voting seat at the table, along with the corporate sector, along with states and nations who are making these policies. It's really a unique model within global policymaking, and one that we'd like to see echoed in other parts of the world to help make well-rounded and multiple sectors involved in our global policymaking. I'm delighted to join you virtually today and hope to be able to answer any questions you might have, and encouraged to see the evolution of private philanthropy really taking up its voice and its responsibility towards the kinds of organizations, projects, and policy changes we fund globally.
Thanks for those lovely words. Thanks, Fatima, for helping us bring Kira into the room. And I want to introduce now our next speaker, who will speak about the work with the CFS with the philanthropic mechanism, Chalice McDonough from the Gates Foundation, who's been with the Gates Foundation for many years and has been involved with the philanthropic mechanism at the CFS. So love to bring you in to share a couple of thoughts about what this work has meant for you and the work that you've done. Chalice?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for this, and thank you to all of the other speakers from both the CSIPM and the private sector mechanism for talking to us about how their mechanisms work and how their memberships engage with each other and with the CFS. Our foundation, the Yates Foundation, has been engaging formally with the Committee on World Food Security all the way back since 2009. That was the year in the aftermath of the 2008 food price crisis that the CFS advisory group was created as a part of the wide-ranging reforms to the CFS governance that were aimed at making it more inclusive and more effective. And so we became a member of this newly created advisory group, and we've remained engaged in and supportive of the work of the CFS ever since. For many years, we were the only philanthropy that was represented in the advisory group. We did coordinate mostly informally with other foundations to see that a range of views were reflected in the deliberations and in the CFS work streams, but that coordination was informal and it wasn't really consistent. There was, and other philanthropies, their interest in the engagement tended to kind of ebb and flow as individual foundations took an interest in specific issues that were part of the CFS program of work. And then if you fast forward to a few years ago, we heard from other foundations that they were also now interested in systematically and formally engaging with the CFS as members of the advisory group. And we were really excited about that. So very excited to work with the Agroecology Fund and the Global Alliance for the Future of Food to create the Philanthropic Foundations mechanism, because we believe that it's like essentially there are a lot of important reasons to engage in the CFS, and other speakers have talked to that: the broad, inclusive, consultative process, building consensus on evidence-based policy recommendations and guidelines, critical issues to support the universal right to food, the targets of SDG 2, and the inclusivity of the governance of the CFS is really unique among international policy bodies. And it's part of why the CFS itself is so valuable to the food security and nutrition sector, because we can't overcome the challenges that we face in food security, nutrition, the right to food, without doing it collectively. And governments are vital, but the sustainable solutions require the combined input and efforts of all sectors, UN agencies, civil society, private sector, and philanthropic foundations. And so that's why I think that the building of the Philanthropics mechanism is so exciting, because it's and why I'm so glad that we're reaching out to other foundations and encouraging them to join us, because we really do represent a wide range of philanthropies, foundations, private donors, and each of us has our own strategy, our own ways of working, and we're in many ways really quite different, trying to achieve different things different ways. But that's why the Philanthropic Foundations mechanism is so important and so exciting, because it is built around not what separates us, but what brings us together. It's a shared vision for a food secure, nutrition secure future for everyone. It recognizes that despite the differences between different individual institutions, we can find common ground and forge a way forward together. And so I feel like the foundation's mechanisms is sort of helping us bring us together, talk to each other, figure out how to collaborate, and mirroring within the foundations with the philanthropic sector, the inclusivity of the CFS itself. And I think that strengthens the CFS in the long run. We've been very supportive of the work of the CFS. We believe it's an important platform to create that inclusive policy and guidance. We've worked through the CFS we've supported it for a long time. I think we've probably I think it's been about $2 million worth of support directly for the work of the CFS over the last 8 or 9 years, including most recently the work stream on the collection of foods and use of food security and nutrition data. And so I'm really grateful to my colleagues from the Agroecology Fund and the Global Alliance for the Future of Food for their partnership, for coming to the table, and I hope that more philanthropies and foundations will join us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chalice, and a great transition to bring my colleague Ruchi Tripathi into the conversation from the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. She's our Climate and Nature Director, the long history of working with the CFS, and would love, Ruchi, to bring you in to talk about the work that the Global Alliance has been doing with our 27 member foundations and many others, and the role of the UC philanthropic foundations playing within the CFS. So bring you in, Ruchi. Great to have you here.
Great, thank you so much. And so much energy. What an amazing sort of place we are continuing to build collectively. I honestly think the Committee on World Food Security is one of the best kept secrets that many people outside of this world don't really know. And I think it's our role as part of this Philanthropic Foundation's mechanism to really promote the amazing work that we're doing collectively at the CFS. We've heard how inclusive it is. So philanthropic foundations like the Global Alliance and our members, can definitely support the CFS by either bringing evidence from their partners and supporting that through CSIPM for them to engage in the policymaking process. I mean, we're all committed to holistic, resilient, equitable food systems transformation. And this, this holding on to this, which is what the CFS really helps provide, anchored in the right to food, is so important. At the moment, food systems has become such a central topic of conversation and negotiations across multiple UN global fora. And CFS remains the home of food systems conversation. So I think it's really, really important, and for us in the Philanthropic Foundation's mechanism, Global Alliance, our partners, and others, to bring in all of those conversations back into the CFS so that this is the space where deep expertise, not just technical expertise, but lived realities and experiences and negotiated agreements sit. They are morally binding. So, I mean, I was part of the tenure guidelines negotiations many decades ago, and so it was so amazing to see a CSIPM, US government, Turkey, all agreeing on tenure rights, right? So the moral authority of such agreements is really important to recognize. CFS now is increasingly beginning to play its role as a platform, which it was always supposed to be, bringing together the best of kind of the latest thinking, the latest policy developments, practice, and monitoring implementation across the global fora, right? So there needs to be coherence with the G20 mechanism, the alliances, any other initiatives, all of that coming back into the CFS is extremely important. And then finally, I would say for the policy products, not just for the philanthropic foundations to feed into the policy conversations, but equally, as Dee was saying, take the products and really help domesticate them within our programming. I think it's really, really critical. I will pause there because I know we have two more speakers, but really excited to have all of you join in this journey. Thank you so much.
Richie, thank you so much. It was really great to get your perspective, again, from your many years of engagement with the CFS and thinking about what role can philanthropy play in this mechanism in particular. So we want to close with bringing Daniel Moss from the Agroecology Fund and Ludovica Donati from the PFM Coordination Committee in, but we have a couple minutes we did see a couple questions come into the chat. So I wanted to just tee up Dee for one question that came in and see if you can address this really big question in a minute or two, and then I'll pass it to Daniel and Ludovica to close us off. So no pressure, Dee. But one of the questions that came in was that the CFS is committed to prioritizing the voices of those most affected by food insecurity and small-scale providers themselves. Yet, these constituencies often do not have access to the resources to build their own development trajectories. So how can philanthropic foundations and this philanthropic foundation mechanism be more attuned to the realities on the ground and support grassroots initiatives there? So Dee, maybe a minute or two, and then I'll pass it over to Danielle.
We need more agroecology funds, more participatory philanthropy where those most impacted are making those decisions about where funding is allocated. So on a local level, here in England and the devolved nations, we have Farm in the Future, and where we have people involved in agroecology contributing and actually directing those funds. And I think, as I said before, community and public partnerships. I think philanthropy has an important role to participate in those and also to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. within those. So I know I'm working with certain funders around that, but it is about involving the people most impacted in philanthropy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think you mentioned the Agroecology Fund and the work that the Agroecology Fund has done to really build out a structure that can be really participatory and engage those most impacted. So with that, I just want to extend a huge thank you to you, Dee, to Ruchi, to Robin, to everyone who shared their perspectives, Kira beaming in by video, and Chalice, and the speakers from FAO, and just so much appreciation for all the work that you all do. I want to appreciate Mateus from the Global Alliance for helping organize this conversation, and Fatima from the Agroecology Fund. And thank all of you for tuning in. I really am so glad we have so many of you here engaging, and really look forward to hearing questions that have come up for you all during this conversation. And with that, I want to pass it over to Daniel and to Ludovica to kind of take a stab at rounding up this conversation, sharing some more about how folks can get involved and what's next. So thank you. Daniel and Ludovica, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And before I speak, just a quick shout out to Anna for her facilitation this morning. Thank you so much for the excellent moderation. And thank you for your leadership of the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. Hello again, Daniel Moss from the Agroecology Fund. And I've had the privilege this year of working as the kind of lead point person with Ludovica on this private foundations, philanthropic foundations mechanism that really is just getting underway. We've mentioned it, and it's been a growing effort over the past little bit more than a year. And so we're in the throes of really organizing the participation. And this, in fact, is our first opportunity to kind of bring it out live to all of you that would like to learn about it and hopefully would like to participate in one way or another. I think no need anymore. We've heard amazing speakers about kind of the logic, the rationale, the opportunity, the urgency, the necessity to fortify this work that CFS does in this kind of remarkable multilateral governance structure that really safeguards the participation of many voices. Most importantly, marginalized voices that don't often have a seat at the table, but we're very honored as philanthropic foundations to have this opportunity to fortify this mechanism and to be part of it. And of course, we want to invite all of you to participate. So the one thing we didn't get into the weeds in this in this conversation about how the mechanism actually works. Overall, how the CFS works. It's a complex body, obviously treating very challenging issues, very intersectoral issues. And this philanthropic foundations mechanism is an opportunity to kind of help you in the philanthropic sector, navigate this tremendous channel for developing policies, guidelines, frameworks around food systems. So we invite you to be part of it. And I think in this, it's both to be part of the kind of formation of these frameworks, these policies, sort of to give into that process of co-creation, which is really what the CFS is, and also to get back and to think about with us, with other foundations, about what is the meaning of these products, these CFS products that the chair spoke about and others spoke about. How can they be better incorporated into our strategies as philanthropic organizations and open the door to collaboration with many of the other people on this call? Really look forward to working with the other mechanisms, with CSIPM and with the private sector mechanism and other mechanisms of the CFS as we fortify this philanthropic sector mechanism. And maybe I'll just say, there was a question in the chat about conflicts of interest. Explicitly, the invitation is for philanthropic foundations to enter into this philanthropic mechanism with goodwill, with good spirit, with no commercial interests involved. And we hope also that by virtue of more peer participation in the mechanism, we hold one another accountable as foundations to supporting the overall common good of that the CFS is pursuing. So with that, I just want to turn it over for a quick word to my colleague, Ludovica Donati, with whom I've had the opportunity, the pleasure of working this past year. She serves as the liaison advisor and will be the one helping to coordinate the participation of you all in the days going forward. Thank you, Ludovica.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for everyone for being here and to the speakers for this session. I just wanted to let you know that please feel free to contact me. I dropped the email in the chat. So for any question on the mechanism or how to join it, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Great, and it's Ludovica has been a fabulous coordinator of bringing us all together. So look forward to your ongoing leadership, Ludovica. Well, with that, I think we'll give you back a minute or two. And just to say, yes, you know, as Anna mentioned, thank you so much to all the excellent speakers. Again, to Anna for her moderation. But most of all, thank you to all of you for your interest. And please do reach out to us. Please do reach out to Ludovica with the email. We have a website as well. And we look forward to being in touch. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.